All right, this is a little presentation on intermittent problems. And anybody ever have an intermittent problem you've had to deal with? Something that was there and then it wasn't, and then it was there and then it wasn't. And what would happen was, you know, one of the famous ones was the one that where they would say, my air conditioner, well, they'd say a bunch of smoke comes from under the hood and I'm hearing noise and they're hearing it pop off on their air conditioner because the pressure's going too high, head pressure's going too high because the fan's not working. And they bring it back up there and you're trying to get the fan not to work and it always runs, you know, it run until it kicks on and off several times and you're saying, I can't get it to do this and I don't have all day sitting here watching this darn thing, and so you just, you know, you work with it and then they send it off before they get down to the stop sign, it does it again. This is the way that kind of thing works. So that's when I came up with the idea of wiring a test light in a series with a fan and turning it through, and if it ever goes off, the fan's bad. That's a go-no-go test, okay? Well, let's talk a little bit about this right here. So I worked for a while at a shop called Davis Auto Service back in 1977, 40 years ago plus, and the lead technician went head-to-head with a 75 Monte Carlo. And the only one very old, but they didn't want to take back to the dealer, so I took it to him. And sometimes it quits going down the road. And so he says, he told me, he said, I'm taking this Monte Carlo out Bellwood Road. He says, if I'm not back in about 20 minutes, come looking for me. Well, about, you know, this is what happened. 30 minutes later, I forgot that I was supposed to go looking for him. And so, oh no, I went and jumped in the shop truck and all that. This is kind of the way that one was set up. HEI 4-pin module. You know, you notice you got an orange and a violet, just like you do on the Ford ignition system I showed you. And this is grounded. Really simple. Your ignition switch powers up that one, and then your coil is fired by that one. This is the one where you can disconnect a pickup coil, put your hand on a positive battery terminal, and tap those terminals, and it'll fire the coil if the module's good. Anyway, so here's the shop truck that we had. And I forgot about him, so I went down there. And what we did was, he hadn't thought to bring anything with him to check for spark. Now this is a good story. So he took his pocket knife, and he looked in the back of the shop truck and he found a piece of heater hose. And he opened his pocket knife up, it was a little fatter than this one. He cut a piece of heater hose about that long off, and he stuck it in that piece of heater hose and he went up in a plug wire to check for spark. Well, what he didn't think about was those fiberglass strands in that heater hose would carry spark really good. And so when I spun it over, the spark had come back and it fired him up real good. He was holding that hose, but it went through the fiberglass hose that got him good. So anyway, it got a jolt, but the problem was right here. The problem was that the bulkhead connector going through the firewall on that one. It was a pushed back pin. That's what the whole problem was on that one. But he had, the problem with intermittence is, unless there's, and there were no trouble codes in those days. There was no cell phone where you could call anybody to come get you. You know, you were just down when you were down, right? All right, so the come and go wiring problem can be mildly annoying to downright deadly. It depends on which circuit's at fault. What if your stoplights sometimes don't work? Hello? Anybody over almost run into somebody because they didn't have no stoplights? Now, if your high mount stoplight don't work, remember I'm always telling you, you're 40% more likely to get rear-ended if your high mount stoplight's not working. That's why if you fail to check it on a vehicle inspection and somebody gets rear-ended and it ain't working, it's 40% your fault. Right? All right, so when a short or an open is consistently present, it's not always, you know, it's always easy to pinpoint the exact location with some of the thicker and more, even when it's there all the time. You know, the wire harnesses kind of go everywhere. You're gonna look at there are places in your shop manuals where it'll tell you how the harnesses are routed, and it's got lines telling you, you know, where different connectors are, where splices are. And I'm gonna start with the easiest connectors to get to. I'm gonna go to the splice is the last place I'm gonna go because it's usually buried in the middle of a harness somewhere under a lot of panels or something like that. All right, so in any case, the smartest thing to do is get some loom and do a quality permanent overlay. You can do that if it's only starting from one place and going to one place. As a matter of fact, my radio in my pickup truck, you know, and I hadn't done a whole lot of wiring work on my pickup, but I did put a different radio in it. And all of a sudden the speaker in this door went dark. Quit working. Sometimes that'll be a speaker, right? Well, I happen to have some speakers that were good ones, and I, you know, popped the cover off and hooked up, and there was no speaker noise coming to that speaker from the radio. Well, I checked up here as a connector, you know, I pulled the center panel off and I checked and I had speaker at that connector, but I still didn't have any over here. Now, you know how much trouble it's gonna be to go find that? You know what I mean? Because it goes back through here and all up under the dash and all that. So I got another speaker wire, and I just connected it to this speaker out here, and I pulled it through that little rubber accordion going through the door in there. I worked it over there, and I hooked it up and, you know, ran me another wire. Made sure I ran it so it would stay out of trouble. Now I got speaker on both sides. See, I could have gone in there in the harness and being real, I'm not curious enough on everybody's car to find out exactly what happened in the middle of this harness as big around as my arm. Let's just run another wire. But if you've got a spider web like that, where you got one splice that's feeding all kinds of stuff, that's not so easy, is it? Unless it's somewhere like between here and here that's feeding the whole network. Well, if you got a short circuit to ground, you know, you got issues there too. And a wire harness is a car's nervous system. Basically what that is. And that's laid out all over the place. Sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 wire harnesses. One time there was an intermittent problem that was happening on a cutaway motorhome when I was at the Ford dealer. And I always like to tell stories about my old shop foreman that looked like Slim Pickens, and he kind of talked like him too. And there's a big bulk connector right in the front end of the hood, and I went in there and found a pin pushed back, and I said, that's what that is. And I narrowed it down to that circuit, and I realized that was a problem it was having. I duplicated it, managed to get it slid through there, latched in place, plugged it back together, problem fixed, no trouble, and all that. And so the shop foreman comes over and says, what do you find wrong with that van over there, that thing didn't work? I said, well, you know where the 12A 580 and 9930 wire harness is plugged together? Hit that big, give him the number of the bulkhead connector, and he cussed at me and called me a smart aleck because he didn't know those wire harness numbers and he didn't know the connector number. I didn't want me to tell him that. You know, this connector had a bad pushback pin. I guess I could have told him that. This AC harness was damaged by the belt. It worked its way out of his, or either somebody had worked on it and they didn't actually put the little band straps back around there. The most egregious problem with one of these is when somebody is putting a timing belt on and the wires go to the crank sensor and they run down there, and you don't latch those things, that crank sensor wire, and it's flopping around close to the belt. They're going to get somewhere between here and the town down the road, over beside the highway, going, because you didn't anchor that harness good, and it got into the belt. Hey, Sharon, what's that big old thing you got there? Oh, that's my carts. Okay. All right. Anyway, what we did was, this air conditioner wasn't cooling, and so what we did was we went ahead and fixed the wires, and then we ran the wires so they wouldn't get in trouble again. And we lubed them and all that, and taped them up, and made a pretty good thing. I always like to use a black tie wrap instead of a white one, but that day that's all we had on hand. Now, moving components like brake pedals and shifters, a lot of the times, Adam, have you ever had to replace the stoplight pigtail on some of these Fords because it wouldn't go, you know? And basically, you're mashing the brake, and every time you bend them, sometimes they don't have any trouble at all, but if they're bending in the right place, they'll just break loose. That particular one right there, this lady says on her Impala, she says, my car won't go in gear. It won't come out of park. I'm sorry, it won't come out of park. And I said, okay. So when I looked, pull up the scan tool, it wasn't seeing the, it was seeing the brake pedal, but it couldn't undo the shift interlock because the shift interlock was down inside the shifter, and she had broken the wire right here going back and forth with the shifter, which she was just doing what she was supposed to be doing anyway, but that wire kept doing this, and what happens if you keep bending the wire? It breaks, right? All right, so think about that when you're troubleshooting. We had to unlatch that, and there's a really good way, and I showed y'all in that other video about how you take your wire, you break it off, you spread those little ears out, and then you put that wire in there and crimp it together and solder it. It's got to be small enough for it to go back in that connector, put it in the right shell, and all that kind of thing. That's a fixable thing. All right, so when you're chasing an intermittent, you need to have some visual or auditory way of knowing when your harness manipulation causes the problem. You can get some of these key buzzers or something, like that, or some kind of I like to hear something or see something or whatever, and it causes the problem to come and go. Like, for example, if I've got this thing where I can see it, and make sure when you put your test light in there, you don't spread the terminals or you'll make a mess. But anyway, somehow or another, you need to have this thing where there is a light there so that when you're jacking around with these harnesses, if that thing changes you know, your circuit that's in question is the one you're checking, and you got it, so if you got a short circuit or an open circuit or whatever, let's say I've got that light in there where it's gonna react. If it's on, it's not supposed to be, or if it's not on, it is supposed to be. Then I start working my harnesses while I'm watching that light. And in a minute, if I'm in anywhere near where the problem is, I'm gonna see it blink off and on. And I'm right there, see? And then I can move it around, and I can look and I can see, okay, I got a problem in the harness right here, or I'm moving it where it's dragging across the bracket or something. I don't know how many of those I've fixed. But the long and the short of it is, what if you just jerk around on the harness and you inadvertently fix it and you don't know when you fixed it or where you were on the harness when you fixed it and you can't get it to do it again? If you got an intermittent concern, the smartest thing you can do is find out where that harness is running and look at it without touching it. Just look at it. Don't reach down here and start pulling on it, because if you do that, you're liable to fix it. Alright, so short finding is pretty cool. That's an 8 amp, 12 volt circuit breaker. I talked about this the other day. You say you got a little, you get those little things right there at the parts store. You plug that in place of the fuse, and you got a light bulb that's wired in series with that breaker. Alright, and so make sure the breaker's amp rate is not too high. Now if you got one, this is a 10 amp one right here. I showed you all that one the other day. And the cool thing about that is when the short happens, this breaker will go dink, and then it'll close up, and it'll go dink, and it'll close up. And every time it goes dink, it opens up, it will turn that light on. So that light will be flashing off and on, and you'll hear that breaker going tink, tink, tink while you're actually looking. Now what I used to do if I was working on a light circuit, I'd put it in here. See, you pull the fuse, and you put that circuit breaker in place of that. And you see, your short, the ground is way off down here. Now if you got your forward looking infrared camera, you can point it, you know, you're going to just about have to find that splice. Point it to that thing and see which leg of that splice is getting hot, or feel of it, or whatever you got to do. What I've done is I've watched all the courtesy lights on the sun visors and everywhere in the car where courtesy lights were coming on. You'll see them come on dim and go off, but one of them didn't come on. It never came on, and the leg feeding that one is going to be the one that's the problem. And that's whenever you go right here, you go snip, or if you can't see where it's at, you snip it and then you run another wire from that point over. You decide the best way to find it. Every one of them is different. 99 Ford Ranger, 103,000 miles, 3-liter engine, real similar to this one we got out here. Sometimes engaged when the key was switched on. When it came in on the hook, if you just turn the key on, now remember what I told you guys the other day, and sometimes I still see this happen. If somebody's working and they say, switch it off, and they switch it off and the engine dies. They'll say, now switch on the key. You don't crank it back up, okay? You see that? You say, switch off, you know, now turn it back on, but you don't want it started, you just want the key on. And 8 times out of 10, somebody that's not familiar with this will crank it back up. We don't want it cranked back up, we just want the key on. On this one here, on key on, you never turn it to start. The starter would just go to start spinning, and it would fire up. And then the little overrunning clutch in the starter drive would just be going crazy. Here's the one I worked on at the Ford place. And if the gear selector was moved from anywhere besides park or neutral, the starter would stop spinning. Which the starter is not supposed to spin if you're in any other position than park or neutral anyway, is it? So that's giving you an idea of kind of where to look for the problem right there. Okay, so that pointed to a short circuit somewhere between the transmission range sensor and the ignition switch. So removing the starter relay would also engage the starter. If you pull the starter relay, you lose the starter. So here's the little schematic right here. That's for panel fuse 20, fuse 28, fuse 24. And there's your ignition switch. And you got your central timer module, which is the GEM module. Similar to that thing you changed on Dodge the other day, right? It's like a body computer and all that, except for that the GEM module replaced this. This was a cheaper version of the GEM module, and when you buy a replacement, you'll get a GEM module if they still make them, I don't know, but anyway. So with the relay removed and a test light probe right here, see, I put a test light in there, and maybe, you know, the other day when you and I were working on the windshield washer, we got a little light bulb with some, you know, like a little, and we plugged it in, and I had you to operate the windshield washer, the light came on, we knew that there's power and ground right there. So we get this right here. We're basically checking, and this right here when you turn that thing to start, it goes through the neutral safety switch, it energizes the relay, and it pulls that starter relay. Let me back up one slide. See, whenever this is energized, that throws this power to the starter, and that spins the starter, and that's what was going on. All right, so here we go. Put the bulb here, we pull the relay out, and it was evident that a short of power was available at the relay anytime the key was on. So if you turn on the key, just switch on the key, you've got this thing fired up. Supposed to only get power from right here, but it was getting power from somewhere else. You get it? So what we were looking at is where are we getting power from? And I've noticed that these are tied together inside the box. Okay? So what's the next thing you would do? Huh? Which fuse? Which one? 28. Say it loud. What? 28? Yeah, 28 would be a smart shot with it. Okay? All right, with the ignition switch in the start position, and that's basically what we were talking about. Power from 24 is what's supposed to go through there. All right, so we found out in removing our fuses that pulling fuse 20, that was the chosen method in this case. Now look at this. Look at the schematic. What the heck does fuse 20 have to do with the starter? Well, it goes to the radio, and then it goes over to the central timer module. This fuse right here, you know, I mean, you could pull that fuse, but then we also found out we could pull this fuse, even with that fuse in there, pulling that fuse still spun the starter over.
Oh, what? I'm confused.
So you said that the test light would come on even with fuse 28 pulled out?
Well, no, you pull 28 out, you lose it, but then when you pull 20 out, you would also lose it. So you put that one back in and pull this one. Since these three were all together, we figured we found out that we had some issue right there. Right, I'm going to show you a little farther. And sometimes, you know, you want to condemn a part, you got to be careful. Like you say, well, this central timer module has got to be what the problem is. Well, that's an expensive part. You know, you put it on there, you may be going off. All right, and so neutral safety switch all the way to the starter relay. That energizes the starter. Now, so we pull fuse 20. And we found out that the problem would go away when we pull that. Fuse 20 removed, light goes dark. That's what it looks like on there. So that carries power from the ignition switch run terminal down to the radio and the central timer module via circuit 1002. Has nothing whatsoever to do with the starter, at least as far as we know, and under normal circumstances. Now, where do you need to go if you've got a circuit you're not sure how it works? Description and operation. Identifix is a good place to go, but description and operation in a shop manual will tell you what's going on. Anyway, as far as what is supposed to happen. Now, if pulling fuse 20 killed the short, then was it possible that circuits 1000 and 1002 were shorted together? Maybe that circuit 1000 was backfeeding the ignition switch run power through fuse 28 to the starter relay coil, because that looked like that was what was going on. And we had a choice of this box or these wires. There's the two wires right there. Circuit 1000 and 1002, enter the CTM connector right here. So you get your hands right on those daggum wires. These are the two wires we're talking about here. All right. Now look at the schematic. If the wires aren't shorted together and we determine they weren't, what else could be wrong? Got to be that. Nothing else it could be if these two weren't shorted together, right? That makes sense. You're tracking it now looking at the schematic. So started to wonder why it was the CTM module and the radio needed to know the ignition switch was in start. So I went to the symptom chart pinpoint test, found an error. According to one particular test, I didn't ever show that on this, the circuit in question, fed through fuse 28, has to be juiced up before the radio will work, but that simply wasn't the case on this truck. There's an error. I removed fuse 28, the radio still worked. See that? The fuse 28 didn't kill the radio. The only reason that CTM gem module needed that circuit was related to illuminated entry as it interfaces with remote keyless entry. We went to the description and operation. That's what you do. You go to the description and operation, you read a little bit. Maybe everybody want to just wing your way through this thing and not read anything? You know, you ain't getting in trouble that way. All right, the shop manual reads this way. The gem illuminates the interior lamps when an unlock signal is received from the remote anti-theft personality module. Incidentally, the wrap module, remember I told you the wrap module on a GM car is retained accessory power. On a Ford, it's remote anti-theft personality. So the wrap module is not the same on every one of them. On Nick's car, it means that it plays rap music, you know. All right, 25 seconds have elapsed since the illuminated entry feature was activated. The courtesy lamp feature is not activated. If the gem receives a request from the wrap module, if you push the button on lock, and the courtesy lamp feature is not activated, if the ignition's in run or start, then the courtesy lamp feature is not activated. So run or start, it's looking at that too, see? All right, so this one didn't have a wrap module, no remote keyless entry. That's what the wrap module looks like. There's a couple of them laying up there. You see them two white boxes laying up there? All right, you notice this little number right here? You know what that number is? If you've got the keypad on the door.
Yeah, you can place that in.
Yeah, that's the number, it's the permanent tune.
Bro, we cannot find mine.
All right, the GM CTM module costs $200. The radio could have been disconnected to see if the problem returned, but as it was, since fuse 28 wasn't needed on this vehicle, didn't even need fuse 28, had no reason to be there. We removed that fuse and sent the Ranger on its way. Pull fuse 28, send them out the door. They didn't even have to buy a part. They didn't need that fuse, it wasn't doing nothing but that. The problem never happened again, and it's possible the circuit fed by 28 might have been backfeeding through a bad diode in the central timer module. So when you took the fuse 28 out of there, you were good to go. Done. Now, get good at reading schematics. There's times when simply reading the description and operation section of a particular system is crucial to understand and repair it. Live it, learn it. You got that? That is a quote from Read It, Live It, Learn It. You ever heard that before? You ever heard that? Read it, live it, learn it. You didn't see Fast Times at Ridgemont High? That's what he said on there. Read it, live it, learn it. All right. Knowledge is power. Maybe try to guess your way to a fix. Adam, you ever try to guess your way to a fix? Did you get embarrassed? Now, Adam was working one time at a dealership over here. You want to tell that story? The guy is trying to fix the transmission module, I guess, wasn't working, or something, a heavy-duty piece of electronics, and he's ordered a $1,200 module. And Adam says, haven't you checked the wiring? You remember that? At the Toyota place?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, all right, tell me what happened.
It was a good one, I don't remember, but I remember doing that, I remember that word.
Well, I tell you what happened. You said you don't just throw a module at it. You check the, and I remember you telling me about this in detail. You said you don't throw the module at it. You check the wiring first. And the guy said, it's a module. So he orders a module, and he puts the module in there. And you know what happened? Just like it was. Did you like it was? And so whenever Adam got it, you said what happened was when he got to looking underneath the wire harness, rats had eaten the wires.
Yeah, that's right.
You remember that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it had animals, and Adam's telling him, look at the wire harness, don't go here, you know? Anyway, it was funny as all get out, how some people just, it's easy to throw a module at it, and you know what? It ain't my money I'm spending, I don't care. You know?
So the customer had to pay that $1,200?
Yeah, I don't remember how that turned out, what happened on there. You know, sometimes the shop will say, well, we found a problem with the module, but it also had some wiring issues, and they let you pay the $1,200.
It's like the story a little bit.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what they do. I mean, you know, every time you turn around, if they misdiagnose it and they've done all this work, I'm gonna tell you another little quick thing. I went one time and I taught a class in a city in Texas, and I was teaching electronic diesel classes to the Border Patrol. Border Patrol mechanics. There's like 25 mechanics in that room. And the guy that was running, that was the head of those Border Patrol mechanics, I was talking to him during one of the breaks, and he says, we had to pay the Chevrolet place $1,700 because of a mistake one of my mechanics made when he was installing the lights and radios and all. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, we took it over there because the ABS light was on, and they worked on it for about 2 or 3 days before they found out that the mechanic that was putting the radios and all in there had pulled one of the fuses and didn't put it back. And I said, wait a minute, they charged you $1,700 to put a fuse in?
Hey,
Really? And I says, you don't owe them $1,700. What they wanted to do was collect the money for their time, because the guy that was troubleshooting it was throwing modules at it and doing a bunch of stuff without even checking the dadgum fuses. You know, and this kind of stuff goes on all the time. Now, this is what I'm doing. I want something better for you guys than this, okay? I want you to know what you're doing. When you go out there and you're trying to work on something, I want you to be able to pinpoint the problem. Now, I will tell you this, as hard as you work sometimes, you may check everything that you can possibly imagine and say, well, I don't know what else it could be but the module. And even the shop manual will sometimes say, try a known good module. You ain't got a known good module. Does the parts department want one back when you've plugged it in and said that wasn't it? No, they do not. You know, so I mean, sometimes you get between a rock and a hard place. But all you can do is all you can do. You do the best you can to find out that you check everything: power, grounds, connection, pin fit. If you put a pin in there and it's one of these Delco instructors I was hearing about one time said, if you unplug GM connectors 4 times, you're going to start having pin fit problems with them. Think about that for a minute.
Good.
You know, so you want to be as non-intrusive as you can possibly be and everything. You ever hear that in any of your classes you went to? Unplugging and plugging connectors back in eventually causes pin fit problems?
Yes, it does.
On some of the Fords that I used to work on, whenever they were given crazy, wacky problems that didn't seem to make any sense, I would take the little wedge out of the PCM connector, and you know they had them little split round female pins in there, and I would pinch all of those together so that they would be tighter on the pins in the engine controller when it plugged in. And I fixed a bunch of cars like that. I would just, you know, pop that little red wedge out and I would tweak all them pins where they'd be a little bit tighter than they were, and maybe spray them with a little electric contact cleaner, and when you plug them back together, everything's fine. And that's all it needed. But you could change a heck of a lot of modules overlooking pin fit issues. You get where I'm going with that? Okay, so who learned something and who didn't?
Let's go back to that schematic. I want to look at it again.
You want to back up to the schematic, all
I wanna
right?
look at the schematic again.
That one.
All right, so fuse 28 was supposed to tie to fuse 24, and that fed your central timer module and your radio.
Yeah, the central timer module never even needed that fuse because you didn't have the wrap module. If you had the wrap module, fuse 28 had a job to do. You know, the remote entry theft personality.
Yeah.
If you didn't have the wrap module, this fuse was totally superfluous. And besides that, it didn't need to be there.
Yeah, so the CTM would get information, or I mean, the radio and CTM were in correlation together as far as like radio memory or radio
Something like that, yeah.
or illumination.
Yeah, I looked deep enough into it to where I felt like there was probably an issue in here that was causing these two, you know, to fire together, and that fuse right there.
That's what I was thinking until you said about the fuse. That's where I was going until you said about the fuse.
Yeah, and when we pull that, you know, I mean, we pull that fuse, they never had that problem again. It was trying its best to fire it up, but it couldn't get over there. See how that right there would go through here and fire up the doggone starter? And we knew it was up above here, knew it was coming from here, because when you put it anywhere besides park or neutral, it would drop the starter. So it was something that was coming through the fuse panel in here. Now there's an outside chance, I suppose, there could have been something going on inside the fuse panel. That's the dicey thing. If you put the CTM on it and that doesn't fix it, or the GEM module is what you wind up getting if you ordered that, then the fuse panel with all that laminated stuff in there in those places, sometimes they short it out too. You ever have to replace those on F-150s that have been wet? That big fuse panel up under there? I've replaced a bunch of them darn things, and they have all kinds of crazy problems.
So if it just piggyback it, the CTM going around the starter and it's making
That particular one, yeah, it was actually running it through the PCM and turning and firing up the starter through that way. But anyway, when we took that fuse out,
it was 99 Ranger had that?
Yeah, 99 Ranger. Yeah, that was one I ran into at the Ford place over there I was helping them with one day. There was another one that had a radio that was doing really stupid stuff. Well, what it was, the wipers wouldn't work right. And we'd done everything we could think of to make those wipers work right. And we finally found out when you unplug the radio, the wipers would work like they were supposed to. And so we went and pulled the radio out of one in the boneyard and put in there and replacing the radio, fixed the wipers. Well, they even asked me to explain that one. I didn't track that sucker down. But we did find out that if you unplug the radio, the wipers work just like they're supposed to. There's nothing else you could do to get them to work right except replace the radio. And unplugging the radio. If unplugging the radio straightens it out, you know, it was that inside the radio that was causing the wipers to go crazy.
connected that to make that don't work.
Yep, you got it. And that concludes our session for today.